Well, welcome to the gathering. My name's George. I'm the pastor here. Great to have you if you're visiting. I'd love to meet you at lunch if you're watching online. Thanks for joining us. This is Family Sunday, and I know all you parents look forward to having your kids in service with you because it's so much fun. I love Family Sundays because it is all about the future. And so if your kids are a little wiggly, rambunctious, loud, noisy, I got a super high tolerance for it, so don't worry. Silent churches are dying churches. So we love kids that make noise and have fun and feel like they get to be a part. And so we're starting a new series today called Image is Everything. Say image is everything. But we're not talking about your image. Your image doesn't really count for a whole lot. We're talking about God's image. This is about being created in the image of God and how that impacts our life and how it should begin to shape us. And I think it's going to be a really significant study over the next week, 8 weeks, to look at how God's image really speaks into every role and relationship that we have. It's what really shapes who we are and how we interact with everyone. So I think it's going to be powerful for us. I'm going to jump right in because I know the kids got like what, this much attention span, and so we're going to try to keep things moving. We're going to be looking at Genesis chapter 1, very first book of the Bible, verses 1 through 26. And so if you've got a Bible, open it up to the very first book of the Bible, very first chapter, verse 26. If you need a Bible, raise your hand. We would love to bring you one that you can keep and read along. Super important that you have it in front of you and that you get to go back and review it later. So if you need a Bible, raise your hand and Ivan will bring you one. Let me go ahead and read this for us. It says, "Then God said, 'Let us make man in our image according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth.' So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Then God blessed them and said, 'Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves over the earth.'" So here's our first idea, is that God created us to be a reflection. Say reflection. All right, God, when it talks about God creating us in his image, this is the basic idea that we're supposed to reflect who God is. And so there's a couple big thoughts that come out of this. The first one is that who we are is based on who God is. We're a copy, we're a reflection. Who we are is based on who God is. This is an existential question or an ontological question, right? That we exist because God exists. If God didn't exist, we wouldn't exist. We don't exist apart from God. Our very beginning starts with God. We are a reflection of who he is. God chose us as humans to be a reflection of who God is. And so we're unique in all of God's creation. Turn to someone and say, "You're unique." And don't say it with sarcasm, right? Don't like, "You're different." No, we're unique in a good way, right? We're unique in that we were the last thing that God made. In other words, we're the pinnacle of his creation, right? When you're building a house, you start with the foundation. How many of you decorate your foundation? No, because it's not the pinnacle. It's not what is the pride and joy. You don't come over, people don't come over to your house and go, "Hey, you want to see my foundation?" Right? It's there. It's substantial. And all these things, light, dark, atmosphere, seas, vegetation, other animals, they're all foundational to what God is doing, but humanity is the pinnacle. They are the high point, God's end game in what he's doing. So we're unique in that one. We're also the only ones that God said were created in his image. Cows aren't created in God's image. Flowers, as beautiful as they weren't created in God's image. God reveals certain things about himself through all creation, but only humans were created in his image. We're also the only ones given dominion. No other creature is given dominion. Humans are given dominion. And we're the only ones that God breathed his breath into. Breath here represents his spirit. God puts his spirit only in humans. He doesn't put his spirit in your dog as much as you love your pet. It is not God breathed. It doesn't have the spirit of God in them. All right, so we're created to be a reflection. Say reflection. All right. And so we were created to reflect three specific things we're going to look at really quickly today. That's the reality of God. That's a relationship with God. And what was the third one? We're going to get to it. I'm a little tired. So let's start with the reality of God. Everything about us is designed to reflect the idea that God is real. We're here to make God real to the rest of creation, right? So God created us with a heart, a soul, a mind, and a body. And that's why when he gives us the great commandment, what is it? We're to love God with what? Our heart, soul, mind, and strength. All that we are is designed to reflect God. Some people teach it's just certain traits. Some people teach it's just the rational mind part of humans that's in God's image. But God created a whole being to reflect him. That's why Jesus didn't come as a mind. He didn't come as a spirit. He came as a whole human being because all that God created us to be is meant to reflect him. Right? We were created with the capacity for greatness and goodness. Turn to someone and say, you've got potential. Right? You've got potential for goodness, for greatness. That's because you're created in the image of God. Right? That's why we all long for what's beautiful, what's loving, what's right, what's good. We don't have. It's not something we're taught. It's not like algebra. You don't have to learn beauty like you learn algebra. You don't forget what's good like you forget calculus when you get out of school. Right? It's not something we're taught because these are all intrinsic to who we are as beings that were created in God's image. Let me give you some example. I'm going to show you a couple images, and I want you just intuitively to try to pick which one best represents the word up here. Okay, so the word is beautiful. All right, so is this beautiful or is that beautiful? Which one's beautiful? Is that hard? No. Which one do you want to smell? Right? Do we say, oh, go smell the poop? Or do we say, go smell the roses? Right? We don't have to get taught these things. It's just intrinsic to who we are. All right, what about loving? Like you think about a loving family, right? And this is not a reflection on anyone here, okay? So please don't take any of this personal, right? So kids, is this loving? Or is this loving? Right? We just intrinsically know what loving looks like, what loving feels like. We don't have to be taught that. Right? Now, a little more abstract of a concept here. What's right? Right? Is it right for children to be playing, free to be playing, or forced to be working? Which one's right? Yeah, see, we just know it because it's part of reflecting God's righteousness. God has a right standard that we all intuitively, instinctively, intrinsically know. All right, what about what's good? Is it good to be a homeless family, or is it good to be a family living in abundance? Which one's good? Yeah, we just intrinsically know there are certain things that are good. What about better? What about better? Is it better to welcome a new family member or to say goodbye to a family member? See, intrinsically, we just know that birth is better than death. Intrinsically, we know death wasn't supposed to be part of the equation. There's something wrong and painful and difficult about it. And we just know these things. And so we're designed where it's built into us. God created us to resonate and reflect the reality of who He is. Now, so we're created, so we reflect the reality of God by being expressions of His goodness and His love. This is how we begin to mirror God, is when we are reflecting, expressing His goodness and His love. When we do that, people see that God is real. All right, the next thing that we see here in this text in Genesis is that we're to reflect the rule of God. Say rule of God. Turn to someone and say, God's got rules. All right? But what is God? What does the rule of God look like? Right? What does that actually look like? Is God mean and punishing and angry? What's God's rule look like? Well, we see that with Adam and Eve, it's a source of blessing. He creates them and then He blesses them. And it's fruitful and delightful. He puts them in a garden and He calls the garden Eden. And the word Eden in Hebrew means delightful. So God's rule is a place of blessing. It's a place of fruitfulness. It's a place of delight. And so when God creates Adam and Eve, He tells them, go and be fruitful. Because this is what my rule looks like. My rule isn't taking, it doesn't diminish, it doesn't degrade, it doesn't destroy, it creates, it brings life, it brings fruit, it brings blessing. Right? He says, go multiply. This is something your life is supposed to bring increase. He says, fill the earth and subdue it. Bring it under the rule of my blessing and my goodness and my love and my protection. And so we reflect the rule of God by multiplying His blessings to the rest of creation. And we're going to see as we go through this in the next few weeks that if we understand what it means to be created in the image of God, this is going to have profound impact on the way we live in our families. If you realize parenting is not about controlling your kids, it's about being a source of God's blessing to your kids. It's going to change the way you go to work. It's going to change the way you're married. It's going to change the way you deal with your finances, because it's not about us anymore. It's about reflecting the goodness and love of God to the world around us. We want to be a multiplier of His blessings. Turn to someone and say, be a multiplier. All right? Here's the last area that we're supposed to reflect God. Where God created us male and female. Now, when it says God made man, I want you to understand in the Bible, this word is Adam in the Hebrew, but it's used to refer to mankind primarily. It's used to refer to an individual, Adam, the first man, secondarily. It says when God made man in His image, it's referring to mankind, and then He said He made them male and female, right? Two different words. So man, when it says God created man, it's referring to the totality of mankind, because He then breaks it down into male and female. All right, so God makes us different on purpose. So again, turn to someone and say, you're different. Right? And God did this on purpose. And I'm not trying to be political or anything like that, but God made us male and female on purpose. God gave us different genders on purpose. And I want to break this down a little bit. And we're going to look at three things in particular that the way God makes us different with our bodies, our brains, and our behavior. Right. So as you study the science of it and worked hard to make this super simple today, that there are three basic differences that scientists agree on that make us different as male and female, and that's our brains, our bodies, and our behavior. So here we go. All right, so we're created to reflect a relationship with God. God created us different. Remember, say you're different. All right, here we go. How are we different, right? So let's look at the difference between boy brain tendencies and girl brain tendencies. All right, what are the differences between boy brains and girl brains? All right, so boy brains tend to be bigger, right? So guys, boys say, yay, my brain's bigger, right? About 10% on average. Right? Girls have what's called, this is a little technical, so I'm going to explain it, interhemispheric connection. You have better connection between your brain, between the different sides of your brain. That means you can switch between tasks faster than boys. So say I'm faster. Right? You can't multitask. They've disproven that, but you switch faster than we do. Right? You're like off. You ever notice that, guys? You're talking with your wife and they're talking about something different, and you're like, wait, what? Right? It's because the connection's just not there. They switch back and forth pretty quick. All right? So our bigger brain's a little slower. All right? So, guys, we have more white matter, right? Which means we process information faster. Girls, you have more gray matter, which means you can process more information in total. All right, so you can handle more thoughts than guys can. And if you've been married for a while, ladies, you've noticed that, right? It's like give him one thing at a time. All right, he can handle it, and he's pretty quick when he's got to make decisions. But don't throw 6 or 7 things at him because he just melts down. All right, just shut down, get a beer, turn on ESPN, and let it reboot. All right. All right, the third way our brains are different, and boys are in general, remember these are all generalizations, they're tendencies. Boys tend to be better at solving puzzles, right? Girls tend to be better with emotional memory. All right, so boys are better spatially, girls are better relationally. All right, boys have a bigger amygdala, say bigger amygdala. That just means you're more aggressive, or you got a lot more aggressive. Anybody got boys? All right. Anybody got boys and girls? Is there a difference in aggression level? That's because their brains are actually different. Boys have a bigger amygdala, more aggression. Girls have a larger Broca area, which means you're better with verbal processing. So girls talk earlier, they talk more, they're able to express themselves better. Boys just go fight. All right. And this is, you ever notice that on a playground? Girls will like sit down and talk it through. Guys are like, all right. And they just boom, boom, boom. Okay, we're done. And it's just because the brain just doesn't want to talk about it. It's just wants to just do something aggressive to solve it. All right, so our brains are different. Say our brains are different. All right. All right, and God made us different that way, right? So God also made our bodies different. How are our bodies different? Boys tend to be bigger and stronger. Say bigger and stronger. All right. Girls tend to fight off germs better. Do you know that? You have a better immune system than boys do. Boys get sick easier than girls do. All right, boys' bones stay stronger longer. Say stronger longer. Right? But girls' hearts stay healthier longer. Right? Say healthier longer. All right, so we're not gonna break, but we're gonna die first, right? All right. So boys have a higher percentage of muscle in their bodies. Girls have a higher percent of fat in their bodies. That's why they're soft, right? Which is a good thing. Boys can't have children. Girls can have children. These are all different by design. God designed our bodies to be very different. Now, which one's better? Right? That's that broca area kicking in. Guys are like, better? No, neither one's better. They're just different. They both reflect the image of God, where our brains reflect God differently. Our bodies reflect God differently. Let's talk about behavior. How are our behaviors differently? All right, so boy behaviors, we tend to take greater risks more often. All right, girls tend to talk earlier and more often. Boys tend to be more physical and aggressive. Girls tend to be more social and empathetic. Boys seek good results. Girls seek good feelings. Boys tend to be more funny. Do you know that? I didn't know that. Scientifically, boys are jokesters, right? If you got a clown in the family, it's probably a boy. Yeah. See? Right? Girls tend to be more caring, right? That's why they play with dolls. Boys light them on fire. Right? Right? And it's all different. We're just created different. Now, how does this pertain to how we reflect a relationship with each other? So we're created to reflect a relationship. God made us different, male and female, so we would complement each other. All right, so that we would fit together, not be identical, but different in a complementary way, not in a competitive way, not in a combative way, but in a complementary way. Right? And this is when you see that we stop reflecting the image of God in our relationships, like when marriages become combative or they become competitive, right? Siblings become competitive. We've stopped reflecting the image of God. So we reflect the relationship with God when we live in harmony with each other. Say in harmony. Turn to say when someone say, I want to be in harmony. Right? And this is what I always tell young couples when we do premarital, that hey, your future spouse is very different from you. Right? I tell guys, she's gonna think different, she's gonna process different, she's gonna feel different, she's gonna talk different. Everything about her is different. Learn to embrace the different. If you can embrace the different, it's going to add to your life. If you resist the different, it's going to hurt your life. And this is when we're reflecting the image of God, when we're living in harmony. All right, so here's the problem. We chose to rebel rather than reflect. Say rebel. All right, say don't rebel. So this is what God doesn't want us to rebel. He wants us to reflect. And so our rebellion obscures the reflection. Everybody got their little handout for today? Look at yourself in there. Do you see yourself very clearly? No, why not? Because it's obscured, right? It's obscured by pride and insecurity and selfishness and worry and doubt and guilt and fear. All the sin that we have, our rebellion against God, it obscures, it clouds the reflection of God's image in us. I'll get to you in a second, okay? All right, so we no longer see ourselves through the lens of the image of God. All right, our perspective is clouded by sin and its consequences. We don't see ourselves and we don't see other people through the lens of God's image. But the good news is Jesus came to restore clarity to the image of God. Say restore. Say, turn to someone and say, Jesus is going to restore you. All right, this is the good news, right? Jesus is the perfect image of God. First, Colossians 1:15 through 16 says, Jesus is the visible image of the invisible God. He existed before anything was created and supreme over all creation. For through him, God created everything in the heavenly realms and on earth. So Jesus is the perfect image of God come to show us what it's supposed to look like. So we can look at Jesus. We can look at how he thought, how he spoke, how he related to people, and that's the way it's supposed to be. Right? Jesus then removes the sin that obscures our reflection. I think I got to change a couple slides here. All right, so he removes the sin that obscures the image. Look at Hebrews 1:3. It said, Jesus being the brightness of God's glory and the express image of his person, upholding all things by the word of his power, when he himself purged our sins. Say, purged our sins. All right, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to take your mirror, and it's actually got a little film on it. Use your fingernail and peel it off. You already did. And now look at yourself. All right, look at yourself and say, wow, you look good. All right, you look a lot better when you're not obscured by sin. And this is what Jesus does. He comes and he removes the sin that obscures our perspective, that takes away the clear reflection that we're supposed to have as the image bearers of God. All right, if you need a little help, ask Mom. Dad's still working on his. All right, Jesus comes and he doesn't just remove what obscures, he restores us by conforming us to God's image. Look at what it says in Romans 8:28 through 29. It says, and we know that all things, say all things, work together for good for those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose, for whom God foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son. And this is what we're going to be looking at over the next 7 weeks after this week. We're going to look at what does it look like to restore the image of God with clarity in our lives? How do we get clear on what it means to reflect God's goodness, the reality of who God is, the rule of God in our lives, his lordship in our lives, and then the relationships that God has in our lives? And we're going to do that by looking next week at biblical manhood. Guys, say manhood. And then the week after that, we're going to look at biblical womanhood. Ladies, say womanhood. All right. And then we're going to look at how that manhood and womanhood gets learned. We're going to look at then what it means to be a son and a daughter. That's where we learn biblical manhood and womanhood. Then we're going to look at how that gets practiced. And we're going to talk about what it means to be brother and sister. That's where we practice our manhood and our womanhood. Then we're going to look at marriage and then how we fulfill our manhood and our womanhood. And then we're going to look at parenting as how we pass on manhood and womanhood to the next generation. So that's where we're headed. Sound good? All right, so let me pray for you. We're going to let the kids go. We're going to have some lunch. So, Father, thank you for this series. Thank you for the fun we've had today. Pray that these concepts would sink deep into our heart. Pray that we would lean into being restored into the image of Jesus, that we could reflect you in every single aspect of our lives. We trust you for it in Jesus' name. Everybody said, amen.